I'm Mark Colker, and I'm running for the office of the sheriff in Dodge County. I feel the sheriff's office should be a nonpartisan position, as should be all law enforcement. So I'm reaching out to all the citizens in Dodge County that may not have a candidate come August for this primary. If you want a sheriff that is going to serve all of you, not just one political party, then I encourage you to vote for Mark Colker on August 9th. The job of the sheriff is to protect everyone in the community, not just a political party and how you're affiliated. Everyone is included in that. As your sheriff, I will work hard and protect each and every one of you. Your current sheriff has become a strain on the community, both politically, financially, and socially. If you want change on August 9th, irregardless of your political party, I encourage you to vote for Mark Colker for sheriff August 9th. Thank you.
How we doing today? It's A Million Styles. Y'all know it is a ShopFM. As usual, I'm bringing y'all the stuff that won't nobody else bring you. Me and my guy Junior here today with Mark. We're just gonna have a sit down, little chat, and see what he's about, and also, you know, bring y'all some information because the vote is coming up real quickly for sheriff, and the ShopFM field. Y'all need to know all the ins and outs of what's going on and meet the candidate who's running for sheriff. So sit back, relax with us. You know, I'm gonna take you on a trip as always, but we finna go. All right, it's hot out here, y'all, so excuse me if y'all see me wiping my head and stuff like that, but y'all know me. I'm ready to go. Again, I got my good friend Mark here. Thanks. I'm glad to meet you and glad you stopped in today. First question I ask you is, who are you? So the people, you know, like, they're so used to the sheriff that we have, Smith, but since you're running, I think the people who are not familiar with you need to get familiar with you. Who are you? Like, where are you from?
Well, I was born and raised in Milwaukee. That's where I grew up. I lived there until I was 18. My dad was a city policeman, so that's why we lived in the city of Milwaukee. I went to high school there at Harold S. Vincent High School on the northwest side of Milwaukee. Graduated from there at 18, then I went in the Marine Corps. So about 5 months after I graduated, I went into the Marine Corps. I spent 4 years there. I was stationed in, luckily I got stationed in Hawaii, but I spent most of my time off of the island. So I spent time in the Far East and in Hawaii. Then once I got out of the military, I was 22-ish, I went back to Milwaukee and I started working for a guy that I built basements, did masonry work. So I did that for about 1.5 years, and then the Sheriff's Department of Milwaukee hired me. So I worked there about 4 years, 4.5 years, and then I came up this way. I was able to get a job with the city of Waupun, so that's what brought me to Dodge County. Okay. I ended up getting a divorce in there, and I got full custody of my little ones, so I was looking to get them out of Milwaukee Public Schools, where I grew up. So we ended up here. The opportunity presented itself, so myself and my two little ones moved up here, and I've been here since. So I've been here 21 years or so, living in Dodge County. I'm remarried. I have a total of 5 kids now. Oh, wow. So that range in age from 28 to 11. So. Well, you got the mix then, yeah. Huh? so I have little ones as well as, and I was just became a grandpa, 2 weeks ago probably. Oh, so wow. Congratulations. With our first granddaughter, so, which is cool. I mean, it's super neat now that, you know, life is carrying on, and now we got another little one around, and so it's pretty cool. And then for like the last 18 or so years, 19 years, I worked for the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department. So that's where I've been since. I have a total of 24 years of law enforcement experience. My family is pretty rooted in law enforcement. My dad was a city of Milwaukee policeman for 29 years and retired. And then he lived up here in Beaver Dam, right on the lake, for a little while. My one brother spent 29 years also with the City of Milwaukee Police Department. His wife spent 25 years with the Police Department in Milwaukee. My wife was a city of Waupun police officer for 15 years, so it's pretty rooted in our family. So that's a little bit about me. I mean, I've been a instructor trainer for law enforcement for 20 years, teaching new recruits and teaching at the tech school, Fox Valley Tech in Northeast Technical College in Green Bay. So that's a little bit about me in a nutshell without going on forever.
So law enforcement is really your thing then?
Yes. I mean, it's...
Not only have you served as a protector, but you also do training also?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. So you got a great background in law enforcement, been different places and things of that nature. How has your community view and association with the community and relationships with that fostered?
Well, I think they've really changed. So 24 years ago, I'm going to be brutally honest with you. 24 years ago when I started, and you come out of the academy, everything is hurry up and catch everybody you can and take them to jail. And you don't really think of the big picture, because that's what when you're brand new and you're newly trained, you want to get out and get after it. But over my 24 years now, I've really realized that doesn't solve everything. Okay, that's a piece of the puzzle, and people have to be accountable in the community for what they're doing. But you also have to look at how they're getting there. How are we interacting? Why am I here now interacting with you in the community in a law enforcement capacity? Well, what has got me here? And what's the real root cause? And how come I keep coming back? And we're going through the same thing, whether it's drugs and alcohol, whether it's domestic violence, any of that. What's the root cause? And I'll tell you, 24 years ago, I didn't care what the root cause was. We're going to go out and get after it, and if you need to go to jail, you're going to jail, and I'm going to drop you off, and there's no more thought for me in that process, other than I did exactly what I was supposed to do in my capacity. But now, having done this for so long, and I've now dealt with what would be now grandparents, and then parents, and kids now. So I've dealt with 3 generations, really, of individuals, and we're not breaking that cycle in the community. Like, we're just, now we're going out and arresting grandkids, where 24 years ago I was arresting the grandparents. And it's the same stuff. It's whether it's drugs and alcohol, domestic violence, and we put them in jail for a little while, they come out, and then we're right back there again. Like this. So for me, when I look at the community, we have to figure out what that root cause is, and how do we get that help to you, whether it's a mental health issue, whether it's a substance abuse issue, domestic violence abuse issue that has now gone on 3 generations. How do we break that cycle so that we don't keep coming back, and the next generation now is out of that cycle, and we have now fixed it or curved it. So that's more of my focus now, community-wise, is figuring out how to get those services to you, which is a big problem because there isn't enough of it and there's not enough money to help everybody, and that's part of the problem. And so we have to become creative. And how do we start dealing with nonprofit organizations and things that are out there to help, or church organizations, to get these people into programs that maybe we can stop this cycle? Because jail isn't the answer for everything. Sometimes that's the option because you have to be held accountable for your actions, and it's reached that level. But you see time and time again that 5 months in jail, 4 months in jail, and we're right back at the same place. And then we just repeat the cycle. So somehow in our community we have to come together to work with law enforcement and to work with all of these other organizations that are out there. Because there's some very good organizations out there but they don't have a ton of funding. So how do we get their name out also so that people in the community start to help with that funding and then get some of these resources to the consumers that need them? I mean, that's where I see the big problem, which has totally shifted for me for 24 years, because I've been able to see that what we're doing isn't effective. It just isn't. You know, we have, unfortunately, there's individuals that we put in jail for substance abuse, and the day they're out, somebody's taking an overdose call on them, unfortunately, and they were in jail for 6 or 8 months and were clean and sober and looked healthy again, but within hours of being out of jail, they've already reused. Like, how do we break that? Because otherwise, what did that 6 months or 8 months in jail do for that individual? You know?
Right, and going on that topic, so one of the things the Shop FM love to do, we like to ask the real questions. You know what I mean? Being a community, trying to serve the community, we know right now in the media, law enforcement is not looked at in a great light. We all understand that law enforcement is very much needed, but we get tainted sometimes because the images we get from media. When it comes to serving the community and trying to give back, trying to change, a lot of us in the community think it's a lot of lip service from candidates or from sheriffs, you know, especially around this time of year. What do you see, or do you have a plan, rather, to kind of curb it? We know you can't do everything overnight, but what are your views in just getting started? Again, like I say, a lot of people in the community, we hear every time, this time of year, we hear the same thing, and we all kind of regard it to lip service. Mm-hmm. But how do you plan on combating that side of it, to actually get to the community, to get us to understand what your intentions are and what your plans are for the sheriffs of Dodge County?
Well, I think the first big step is I have to get into with all the chiefs, okay? Because the sheriff's department is pretty unique here in this county. It's pretty rural still when you get outside of like Beaver Dam, and I mean, Beaver Dam is really the biggest municipality. So I have to get a good working relationship with all of the chiefs and figure out what they're doing in their communities already, as far as relations with the community and the law enforcement, because that's a big part of it. What do they already have in place? Are they doing anything? Are they not doing anything? And then my view is we really have to get our officers. So just take Beaver Dam. I have to work very close with the chief because this is his area. But then I have to get my officers tied in with if he's out in the community or he's doing some sort of event somewhere, so that our officers are involved, and then the people in this community can see the deputies also, okay, and start to figure out who they are and who's working in this area and what they're about. Like, just so that they learn they're regular people just like everybody else, right? They're doing a job, but they're part of your community just like you are, okay? So you can kind of get to know them as individuals, not so much as the person that shows up wearing a badge and is just there for this interaction, whatever it is, good, bad, whatever they're at your residence for. But you actually know the person behind that badge. I think that's a big part of it. And it's going to be a little bit harder in the county because it's so big and there's so many little areas and pockets of communities. But I think that's a big, big part of it, that we just have to get out. And you have to know who we are, whether that's through community functions, whether that's just being out in the community and talking to people, say at the gas station. If we stop there, having a 2-minute conversation with you and say, hey, just so you know who I am, you know, who those officers are. I think that is a huge part of it, that we just have to, because I think that's part of the problem in communities is you just see the officer show up in a uniform and you don't know who they are. You don't know who they are as an individual and what makes them tick, just like we should learn what makes the community tick. Right? What's important to you? What issues are important to you? You know, and that's a big puzzle for the sheriff because it's such a big area. It's a little easier when you're a chief and you're connected to your, you know, like the chief here in Green Bay or in Beaver Dam is so connected to the community because this is where he serves every day. And he's getting that continued feedback from the individuals in the community. So that's why it's important to work with them and have that good working relationship. But I think it's so important just to get out so you know who we are. Before we call you, before you have to call us, you know who we are as individuals. Because I think that's a big, when you look at big places like Milwaukee, I think that's a big part of it is there's so many cops, right? 2,000 policemen there. And every day you're getting somebody different in your community because that's just the makeup of it. But here it's a little more unique. And I would like to have, when I'm elected, I would like to get in and take a look at how these officers, how the deputies are being assigned around the county, so that we can start to have them maybe for longer periods of time in an area of the county, whether that's 3 months, 6 months, so that they really get, that deputy that's working this end of the county becomes part of this community, all the communities in this area where they work, because they're here for the next 3 or 6 months instead of shift by shift, because then you just get anybody, and you don't know who they are. So, I mean, that's a big piece of the puzzle that has to be done, and I don't have all the answers yet, and I don't have all the answers of what all the chiefs are doing, and I won't get that until I'm elected, and I can sit down and meet with them. So I don't have the magic
answer. Right.
I don't have the magic answer, and I'm not going to feed you something that I'm going to change the world in a week, because that's not realistic. It's not. I mean, this would take quite a while to build back the relationships. I mean, over the last couple of years, they've been damaged, and the media has done us no favor.
None at all.
No favor. You only get small snippets of that 1% of bad cops that are out there that are doing things that they shouldn't be, and you're not getting the other 99% of those law enforcement officers that are in your community and want to serve those individuals and are doing good things every day.
Right, and I think it's very vital that we change the narrative. Yes, we do have some bad cops. We got a lot that actually care about the community and care about the people that reside in that community. And it's refreshing to know that you're one of the ones that want to change the narrative. That leads me very quickly to my next question. We hear this. I can see it. I know you. Why should we vote for you, though?
I think it's time that, so the current sheriff now has had almost 8 years in there, okay? And when you look at, when I started to look at, when you look at the drug problem, we'll just hit on that in the community, okay? And so he's had 8 years, and in both election cycles, he said drugs are his number one issue, right? And we have to get after it and combat it. And he gave you the lip service that I'm going to get out and we're going to get after it. But now we're almost 8 years later, and Dodge County, as rural as it is, we're number 3 in opiate deaths in the state of Wisconsin.
Oh, wow.
Right behind Milwaukee and Dane County. Okay? So that puts it in perspective of that there's a true drug problem here, okay? In this community and in this area. And it's all over the state. It's not just, and all over the country, unfortunately, the drug problem. But for us to, and when I looked at the numbers, and we had, I think it was 7 opiate overdose 7 years ago. Last year we had 30 overdose deaths here in Dodge County. Okay, our current sheriff said, oh, well, numbers don't mean anything. But those are per 100,000 residents, so you can't skew those numbers. Okay, they're 30. That ranking that gets us at 3rd in the state is done off of deaths per 100,000 residents. So you can't skew that to make. I mean, that's his claim, that we're skewing the numbers so that it looks worse than it is. You can't skew that.
Right.
You can't. It's per 100,000 residents. That's it. So, when he's had 8 years now to get after it, and he hasn't. It's actually gotten worse. Okay, we've gotten far worse than we were 8 years ago. Okay, he makes all of these claims that this drug unit is doing all of this work. I just did an open records request that he gave me back in the last 2 weeks and said they don't track the numbers. I asked for numbers that the sheriff's office was producing for drug-related arrests, and and then referrals to the DA and convictions, and the answer I got back was we don't track it. So how do we know we're doing a good job then in the community if we're not tracking what we're actually doing?
You got to have a footprint.
Yep, and either we're not tracking it because the numbers don't look good for them, or we're not tracking them. And either way, I think that's a problem. So I want to hit some of these hard issues, okay? Drugs and alcohol, or substance abuse in general, is a big issue, and it fuels a lot of the rest of the crime that you have in your communities. When you look at just thefts and robberies and burglaries and your thefts from your storage units and the catalytic converters that are being stolen off of vehicles, when you boil that down and you catch some of these individuals, it's to fuel their drug problem. That's what they're stealing that catalytic converter off your car to sell it to somebody else for $20 so they can get their next dose of whatever it is that they're using. So if we stem the drugs coming into our community, I think is a huge plus. It'll start to wean some of the other property crimes that you're having. So when you look at that, but then I look at, okay, so you have a first-time user, say, and we encounter that first-time user, how do we get that first-time user to stop that cycle, right? Instead of, it's really easy for me to arrest them and take them to jail, drop them off, but then in a couple months they're going to be back out and they're going to be that user again, and they're going to be back breaking into your storage units and taking your catalytic converters to fuel their drug problem. So how do we stop that right away in the beginning? I think that's a big part of what has to happen, and a big part of why I'm running, because I now have taken this other look where, how do we get that individual into a deferment program? And there are some things going on in the county. The district attorney is doing some deferment programs already and having some success with them. But how do we build on that so that we get you out of that cycle? We don't just throw you into the criminal justice system and then you feel after your first stint there that, well, now what am I going to do? Who's going to hire me? Now I have this criminal conviction, or I have this, they know I have a drug problem. Like, how am I going to now be a viable candidate at a business that's going to take on somebody that has a drug problem?
So
okay?
Do you want the sheriff's department to be a little bit more hands-on with the community groups?
Yes. Whatever we can get our hands into, that these community groups, whatever they're doing in each of these communities, we need to be part of it, or need to know about them, and then need to know what resources they have available to help us. So when I encounter that individual, we have something to refer them to, and that's
not just throw the cuffs on them.
Yeah, and that may be the first step. We still may have to make that arrest and take them to jail, but then how do we defer that prosecution maybe on this first offense and get them into a program, a drug and alcohol program, or a domestic abuse program, so that we can curb that? I mean, because if we don't break that cycle, we don't ever, and the burden that our county jails and the prison systems are on our taxpayers is tremendous.
Yeah,
we know
as
that.
a taxpayer, I hear it over and over again, like, we housing all these guys and we paying for it, and it gets a little burdensome.
Yes.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
But we understand it's a necessity. So I think more than anything, what the community needs to understand is the fact that law enforcement is going to do their job, due diligence and serving the law. But you're having an idea of being more engaged with some of the backside of it to help these people not be repeat offenders. I think that's a great idea. I think that's very needed. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue this in a minute. Rain is coming in. We're outside, as y'all can see. We're going to move this to the inside, but we'll be right back at you in 5,